I'm Andrea Welter. Some of you will have met me in panel 2. I'm an experienced senior leader in the West Midlands, and my journey, I started as a supply teacher and I currently work as an assistant head teacher. Growing up, I had one BME teacher, and that was when I went to secondary school. She taught me chemistry. So I did not see what I wanted to be. And in my experience, this is crucial for all pupils. I've had a lot of instrumental influences in my life. My mom and her Black midwife colleagues, former bishops in church, I'll name some of them: Bishop Bailey, Bishop Brown, Dr. Miles Monroe, who some of you will know, my current Bishop Watson, and Dr. Joe Aldridge. I'm just going to introduce Javay Welter, who is my husband, and he's going to give you some background.
Yes, my name is Javay and I'm an MFL teacher in the West Midlands. I grew up in Martinique, so the home of Frantz Fanon. And I had lots of Black teachers there and head teachers, and they had a very positive impact. Coming back to England in 2001, I also had some Black teachers. However, this was predominantly due to the fact of my school, where it was situated in the West Midlands. And also at university, I noticed there was a lack of Black lecturers. And also it also had an impact on my academics as well. However, I still did well and graduated and qualified to be a teacher. As a teacher, I am a positive influence for all pupils. All pupils can learn from me, regardless of who they are. And also we need to teach young pupils about high achievers in all races, because there's high achievers in all races, if you think about it. And also we need more Black male teachers. I believe that in England, there is a crisis at the moment that is ignored by all government, all media. If you look at the stats, we're only 1% of teachers. There's only 3,000 teachers that are Black in the UK out of 500 teachers just in England. 500, that's 500,000 teachers in England, and there's 3,000 that are Black male teachers. And I believe there's about 6,000 that are female teachers. So I'm going to finish off with 3 different high achievers I would like you to know about and be inspired. These are 3 individuals who've contributed to education in the British system. However, their contribution are not always mentioned. So firstly, I would like to talk about Carlton Duncan, who was the first Black head teacher of a secondary school in England. He became a head in 1982. However, that's not mentioned. And also I'd like to talk about Tony O'Connor, who was also the first Black male head teacher of a primary or educational system in 1967. And the last one I'd like to talk about is Yvonne Colony, which was the first Black female head in England in 1969. So research this thing and inform your kids. Finally, I'll finish off with a quote from Marcus Garvey, who states that a people without knowledge of the history and past is like a tree without roots. Some of our people, there's no roots. Thank you. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Javay. I'd like to introduce our first panelists. We are honoured to have Dr. Victoria Showunmi with us. Dr. Victoria is an academic at University College London Institute of Education in the Department of Education Policy and Society. Her research interests are identity, race, gender and class, and her strong career profile reflects this with research outputs in the areas of leadership, identity, gender, race, and equalities in education. Dr. Showunmi has developed a national and international reputation for her work on the emerging themes of identity, race and gender in the context of 1, leadership, and 2, Black girls and Black women. She holds memberships of the American Education Research Association and Women's Studies, SIG. Dr. Showunmi is also one of 2 international scholars to be elected to the Special Interest Groups Executive Committee as a member at large for the American Educational Research Association. She is a member of the British Education Research Association, British Educational Leadership and Management Administration, and National Women's Studies Association. As principal investigator for international research projects Dr. Showunmi, exploring firstly educational leadership and secondly Black girls, women's experience in education and the workplace. Dr. Showunmi has publication links with colleagues in the US, West Africa, Pakistan and Europe, and is an international visiting scholar working with colleagues in North America, Brazil, Pakistan, China, Azerbaijan, Ireland, Germany, South Africa and the Caribbean. She's also a module leader for sociology of race, module leader for minorities, migrants and refugees in UCL IOE, and lectures on BA and MA programs in Germany, in which she introduced Black feminist theory and critical whiteness studies. Dr. Showunmi, it's our privilege to have you with us, and I now hand over to you.
Hi, everybody. Okay, let me just get back on here. Can you hear me, everybody? Hopefully you can. I've been asked to speak to you about who should be leaving and the importance of a diverse teaching staff. So I think that's what I'm going to be doing as part of this panel. Let me start first of all. I think it's an interesting point you've asked here, who should be leading? I suppose I'd unpack that and think, well, what do you mean by leading? Do you mean who should be leading in the classroom or who should be leading in the organization? And I'm going to focus really on higher education anyway. So in the classroom, I think you're absolutely right to ask this question, who should be leading the classroom? Because presently in higher education, the numbers of Black academics within higher education is very small, is insignificant regarding what needs to be. I know many of you will know the numbers which are bounding around a lot, which are on professors, full professors. And those numbers, most people can kind of shout those out. I mean, it's really around about 85, between 85 and 90 full professors within the United Kingdom. And that is a mixture of males and females. And when I use the word Black, we're talking about African and African Caribbean. So that's full professors. And if you look at the number of women, there's 27 full professors out of the numbers regarding 157 universities. It's either 157 or 147 universities. I give you that number. Now, if we then start looking at, okay, let's look at the numbers regarding academics. And I think it's important to look at what we mean by academics, because higher education is complex. We have post-1992 universities and we have 1992 universities. And the difference between them is, one is that there's Russell Group universities and the other is which aren't Russell Group universities. And in those universities, the way you are referred to as an academic can also differ. And I think it's important just to tell you this, so you can kind of get a picture of what I'm trying to say. Roughly, if we look at some of the kind of roles which are in higher education establishments, roughly this is, in the academic category, we are looking at researchers, teaching fellows, and assistant, associate, or full professors. That's a very, very rough kind of looking at that. In many of the universities, that could be lecturer, senior lecturer, reader, research associate, research officer, teaching assistant, teaching fellow, those types of words which are used. On the other hand, you've also got the non-academic, which are academic related or professional staff. I wanted to just tell you that. Now, what does this have to do with leading? Well, you also need to understand how the university is made up, and it's made up of various different parts. I'm going to talk about mostly Russell Group. That's mostly where I've spent most of my time. You've got faculties or schools, which are large parts of organizations within the university. So a faculty or a school could be 5,000 people, depending on the size of the university. So you've got faculties and schools, and then you'd also have departments. And so the departments would be within the faculty or the school itself. Now I give you that, and you can see the complexity. If we ask the question, who should be leading? Who should be leading the organization? Well, we currently have, I think it's the numbers around about 5 who are provosts of universities. So somebody who leads the university. There's about 5 which are African or African Caribbean out of the whole of the country. That's the numbers we have. We did have 2 females, which one of them was Valerie Amos for SOAS, and the other person was, she's at LSE. She's still at LSE now. I can't remember her name. I know she's Egyptian. So you can see the small numbers. If we then look at within the organization and then we think, okay, we've looked at the organization, now let's look at the departments. Who's leading the departments? Very few numbers are African or African Caribbean heads of department within the university. And you have to ask yourself the question, why? So that's kind of giving you a small little bit there. Let's look at the classroom and who leads in the classroom. You will be, I said that I was a module leader for sociology of race. Now, being a module leader, lots of people can be module leaders. I'm in a Russell Group University. I'm at UCL. I'm based in the faculty of the Institute of Education. Sociology of race has never had a Black academic teaching that, not teaching it, but actually running it. And it's the first time that they have, and it's myself. What it's had before is white academics, which are doing race. So that in itself needs to be acknowledged for what that is. I think the other thing is that we're the universities which are based in London or in different parts of the UK, we attract Russell Group universities, I'm going to talk about those at the moment, attract a high caliber of students across the world, including our home students. And many of those students come to the UK because of diversity. And diversity because they think they're going to have something which is different to their monoculture. Because some come from very much of monoculture. And so they come to the UK thinking, oh, good, we're going to have a teacher which doesn't look like us. And we're going to be able to engage with the diversity which they've known about across their own country, which perhaps they don't experience. So they're disappointed that they can go through a whole university experience, never to come across a Black academic at all. And they ask questions, why is this? Why don't we have a Black academic to be able to engage with or talk about? So that's one area. Another area is when they're coming to do their dissertations, or they're coming to do their thesis, which is to do PhDs, dissertations to do with their BAs, or to do with their masters. They want to, perhaps some of the students want to do something which reflects something to do with a diverse subject. When it's Black students, they also want to do something like this, but they find themselves up against some challenges because they are sometimes moved into a different direction, or their particular area isn't considered real scholarship. And so they're then moved into doing something else, which they're frustrated about. So come back to the question of, so why, who should be leading? Well, we should be leading through a diverse cohort. We should be leading where there is a good mix of African and African Caribbean teachers. I'd like to give you something personal. When I first went to where I am now, I remember being in the corridor and a couple of colleagues asking, saying, oh, you're the only person in the corridor who's got a doctorate. Why is that? Well, we wouldn't have been, I and some colleagues of mine wouldn't have been recruited to an establishment if you didn't have a doctorate. Where some of our colleagues would be recruited without a doctorate and then enable them to get their doctorate while they're actually teaching, which I think is really interesting. So they will get the post even though they haven't got a doctorate, but we wouldn't be allowed in without a doctorate. And I'm talking about some of the top universities, which I'm talking about here. What else I think I would say which is important? I suppose the other importance is that knowledge about who creates knowledge. Well, you could be made to believe that the only people which create knowledge are white male men, and in some cases women. But you know that's not true. So having a diverse group of people who are leading enables people to touch into, to gain access to the reading. What kind of reading can I do besides white female feminists or white men who are philosophers? And I want to go past that and not feel that I'm asking for something which is problematic to actually ask for. I think this is something which we also need to understand. I just wanted to just touch a couple more points and then I'll pass on to my colleagues. I'm not sure what the time is. I know I needed to just have a few minutes. I'm also co-chair of the Liberating the Curriculum at UCL, which I think UCL has been leading on that. And what that does, it's part of the connected curriculum, but the Liberating Curriculum was established to really look at how we can liberate the curriculum so it can be a diverse curriculum and take on board all the different facets of equality within it. Now, of course, I'm very interested in what's going on with gender because I'm a feminist. And when we talk about gender, it's always about white women. So I'm always wanting to disrupt the notion of what it is to be a woman and Black. I'm also, of course, part of the liberating the curriculum around race. And what is it in race? What do we need to do? Why is it that when someone does research, they don't think about what impact it has on Black students? They will talk about what they're doing, but they don't actually think of the impact on Black students or Black participants, whatever it is. So I think that's something about who's leading, because if you are leading, you're in a situation where you can ask the questions. And it is about asking the questions, because within the establishment, people are grappling to get to the top. And the top in many people's eyes is to be a professor. Now you'll notice that I'm not a professor. I have been associate professor and a senior lecturer in one or two universities. But I've not got that here, which is an interesting question to ask. You have people which are grappling to get to the top, but they would have never done anything to do with diversity or even engaged with it, because if they did, they would have thought, well, it's not going to be beneficial. Or if they didn't think it would that. If they did, they would do it only for to enhance them up the ladder. And so what I'm saying is, it's about who's leading and why are they leading and how they lead is an important point in the classroom, but also whether you are in a senior leadership role or whether you are the university head of the university. And I remember talking to Floella Benjamin a couple of times because she was, of course, Chancellor at Exeter, University of Exeter. And being there, it was a pioneer for her to be there as Chancellor, because at the time there was no Black chancellors, and she was one of them. So to be a chancellor, and of course a chancellor is more of an ambassador than a provost. So she was that person. So I think you've asked a really interesting question: who should be leading? And remember what I said to you, we need to break that down. What do we mean by leading? Hopefully that gives us a starter as we move on to the next person. I know.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. That was very inspirational. And myself as a Black woman, it is about knowing that sometimes in the room, you're the only Black person, whether male or female, and for pupils seeing what they want to be. And, you know, it can be said, if you can't see it, then you can't be it, and having those role models to be able to look to.